Hi, Sam here for ProRaster Scientific. New in version 2.2 of ProRaster Scientific is the Create Product Sequence wizard, which dramatically reduces the time to create and edit sequence multispectral products. So access to the wizard is from the Browse Products drop menu button. So drop the menu down and you'll find the wizard down here at the bottom. So the workflow for the wizard is really 6 steps. Firstly, you'll specify the script that you want to create or edit. These scripts are saved, so you can come back to them. Select the scene database from which you'll source all of the scenes that will be used in the product. Specify a query to select those scenes. Then specify how the scenes will be grouped together into one or more temporal events. These are the frames in your sequence. Then select the product database to which all of the products that the wizard will generate will be written. And then finally execute the processing operation to create or update the products. So we're on the script page here. Each time you run the wizard, you will either create a new script or edit or clone an existing script. And these are all saved so that you can come back to them in the future. If you edit an existing script for which a product has previously been generated, the old product is preserved, it's just modified. And that means that any processing chains that you've defined for that product using the product editor will be preserved, and you won't have to recreate them. So the purpose of editing a script is really to update a product sequence with new data, rather than to completely change all of the properties. If you want to change the properties of a script, it's probably better to clone the script, and then you're able to change all the properties. Or if you've got a completely new operation, then you can create a new script. So on the script page here, you can see this drop list contains the scripts that have been created before. Hit the plus button to create a new script. And then you have to give a name to this script, and the name must be unique. So if I call it Murray 1, you'll see that it's giving me an exclamation mark here, says the script name is not unique. If I change it to Murray 12, it says okay, that's all right. So all of your scripts have to have a different name. You can delete that script. I can come into this script and clone it. Now I have a new clone. We'll call this Murray 3. Hit OK. And just a final word on Script Manager. And I'll just cancel out of this and go up to the MSS Options dialog. So in here you'll see a button which you can hit to delete all of the scripts that you've created, as well as all the report files that have been generated, and so that sort of clears everything out. So let's create a new script, and we'll just go with that and go next to the next page. So now we have to select the scene database from which the product will acquire all of its scenes. So you can only select one, so we'll just choose one like Murraylands and hit next. So now we're on the multispectral satellite page. In this page we want to define the parameters of the scene selection query. So we're going to select the platform and the family or the bird, the processing and the product. Now as you make selections in this page, the lists are going to be modified to reflect the properties of the scenes in the database. So if I just go back, I'll go back to this all scenes, and you can see it's telling me, well, I've got Landsat and I've got Sentinel-2. In Landsat we only have family 8 and 9, and if I go to bird you can see I can choose bird 8 or 9. For Landsat 9 I only got collection 2 data, and I have either bottom of atmosphere or raw, which is top of atmosphere, so I can choose that product. So that's defined a query which is going to select scenes from the scene database. Now we come to the product page. And you need to choose the type of product that you want to create. It's either going to be a scene, mosaic, collated scene, or collated mosaic sequence. In fact, you don't have to generate a sequence with the wizard. You can create just a scene product, mosaic product, a collated scene product, or a collated mosaic product. However, that's a specialized case of the use case for the wizard. So we choose our product, scene, mosaic, collated mosaic. And then for each of these, there are going to be some different options. But there'll always be this option, and that's specify the tile IDs. So now we're going to refine our query by specifying exactly what tiles we want to include. So I'll just cancel out of that. Let's go to the scene browser, and we'll just browse, say, all scenes. Here's the tile here. It's in this column. So in Landsat, the tile is, say, 9980. This is a mashup of the path number and the row number. In Sentinel, the tile ID is this sort of funny mashup of numbers and letters. That's the official name of each tile in the Sentinel delivery system. So you need to put these tile IDs into the wizard. What you can do is right click, and down here you'll get a tile ID to clipboard, and that will copy that tile ID up onto the clipboard, and from there you can paste it into the wizard, or you can have like a little text file in which you're compositing your tile IDs. And you'll find that in other places too. So if I go to a product, let's say here, and we have a mosaic, I can also copy the tile IDs from a mosaic, and in that case, you know, if there's 20 tiles or scenes in that mosaic, it'll copy all of those IDs up to the clipboard. So let's do that. Come back into our sequence wizard. Hit Control V, and there it's copied in all of the tile IDs that were from that mosaic. So if you have a scene sequence, you just need the tile IDs. If you have a mosaic sequence, you need the tile IDs, and then you need to specify how the tiles will be ordered in the mosaic. Now usually we're going to order them from lowest quality to highest quality. The highest quality ones will overprint the lower quality ones. So if you've got cloud, you want to put those scenes at the bottom so that where there is overlapping areas between scenes, higher quality scenes overprint the lower quality scenes. So you're usually going to order by cloud from most to least. If we're creating a collated scene sequence or a collated mosaic sequence, now we need to also specify what the masking field and band is going to be. So it's picked out the mask field, and it's given us our options here of the bands that we can choose. This comes from the QA data. So we can go for clear pixels or land or water. And in the case of clear pixels, we're going to mask out all of the pixels that contain cloud. And by collating, we're going to bring tiles together, we're going to bring tiles together at different times, and we're going to fill in the gaps where we've lost data from cloud with good data from other tiles. Then we go to the time page. So now we have to define all of the events in the sequence. So each event will have a time, and at each event we're going to gather scenes from around that time, either before or after or both, and include them in the product at that sequence time, at that event time. So firstly, it gives you a list of all of the scenes that it's acquired from the database. And here's all our scenes in temporal order. And you can now restrict the scenes that you want it to work with by selecting these things. So I can say I want this from October the 2nd to November the 3rd. So only those scenes within that list are going to be used. So this is another refinement to the query that you've defined to select scenes. On the other hand, you can just leave it with earliest and latest. And if you've got and if you're editing a sequence and you've acquired some new scenes, then if you've got it set to earliest and latest, then it's just going to automatically add all those new scenes into your sequence, and updating your product is really just a question of clicking through and everything will update. So the wizard is going to try to group scenes into acquisition events. And this is essentially optional. If you use this by acquisition option, or you define your time span in terms of the number of acquisitions instead of the number of days, then getting acquisitions is important. So what it's going to do is it's going to go through and group the scenes based on this time span that you define here. So this might be in seconds, so I make this 3,600 seconds, or it might be in hours, and that's converted that to 1 hour, but we may say that's 24, or let's say it's 48, or it might be in days. So you specify this time period, and we might say 8 days. And down here it says it's detected 40 scenes, and there are 8 acquisition events given that acquisition period. So now we need to define how the sequence events are determined. So firstly, we can go by acquisition. So whatever it's determined up here, each one of those acquisitions is going to become an event in the sequence. It will be a frame. So in this case, we'll have 8 frames in our sequence. In that case, we can also specify the time of the event that is allocated to each frame in the sequence. So we're going to have a whole bunch of scenes contributing to each acquisition. We can choose whether the event time is going to come from the earliest scene, or from the latest scene, or from the scene in the middle, or from the time point that's in the middle of the time range of all of those scenes that are contributing to that acquisition. Second option is by interval. So now we're saying, okay, I want an event every n days, and here's the n days here. So in this case, I'm saying, okay, I want a event created every 4 days. Now by default, the first event will be at the time of the first scene, and that's, you can select that here, earliest scene. If you want it to occur at some other time, you can select specify the time, come up with this little thing, hit OK. Now you've got some manually defined time, and that will be the time of the first event, and then every subsequent event will be 4 days after that. Let's just go with the earliest scene. The next option is by days in the month. So you then have to put in this comma delimited list of the days in the month that you want the scene, the events to be generated. So I could say I want it on the 8th and I want it on the 24th. So in every month over the period of the whole sequence, you'll get an event on the 8th and an event on the 24th. Similarly, you can say by days in the year. So you might say, okay, I want one on the 1st the first day of the year. Then I want one 3 months later, say at 3 months is 91 days later. And then I want one 3 months after that, which is 182. And then I want one 3 months after that, which is, say, 273. So you'll get 4 events throughout the course of the year, and that will go on over each year. And in both of these cases, you can also set this earliest time. It'll be based on the earliest scene by default, but you can specify a manual time, and then it'll be the first day that suits the criteria after that time. So at each event, we have to allocate scenes to that event. So it might be a mosaic. We've got to allocate all the scenes in the mosaic to that event. So this is the time range over which scenes will be gathered for each event. So you can specify the time range in days. So I can say, all right, I want you to search 16 days before the event and no days after. Or you can say, I want 0 days after and 0 days before. Then it's just going to look on the day of the event. Or you can spread it out on both sides. I want 16 days before and 16 days after. So all of the scenes that are within that range of the event time, we're going to include those in the product. And alternatively, you can specify that by acquisitions. So instead of days, it's going to be acquisitions. So it's going to come back up here and go through these acquisitions. And all of the scenes that are included in those acquisitions will then become part of your spread. Now, if you're making a mosaic, there's one other option. So if we change this to a mosaic sequence, now you'll see there's this final option down here called Select Tiles By. So with a mosaic, if you're creating a mosaic from Landsat scenes, then assuming it's not a collated mosaic, assuming it's just a standard mosaic, then you won't want to include the same scene twice within each frame of that mosaic. And there's just simply no point doing that. And so we have the option in that case to specify how you'll select the tile that will be included. So in the case where there are multiple of the same tile, we'll choose one that is most appropriate. Usually what you would choose is the tile that is closest in temporal proximity to the event date. On the other hand, if you're working with Sentinel data, 2 tiles that are the same tile in Sentinel might have completely different data coverage in them because the data is coming from different scenes. In that case, you want to use both of those tiles. And so there's this option here to select all tiles, and that's probably what you'd use in Sentinel in order to pick up that situation where you've got scenes where you've got tiles, the same tile, but have got different data coverage. So next we go to, now because we're editing, it's not allowing me to actually select, but on this page you choose the product database that you want to target, or you can hit the plus button and create a new product database. When you edit a script, it doesn't allow you to change the target product database. It has to go to the original product database that you chose when you first defined the script. That's why cloning can be useful, because then you can go and put it somewhere else. And finally, it will execute. Now, I don't know what we're going to do, what's going to happen here when I execute. Anyway, okay, it worked. And it comes up with this dialog. Now, you need to click through these things. So firstly, hit View Report, and it will open up a text report in whatever your standard text file viewer is. You should go through this report carefully and make sure that everything's happened the way that you expected it to happen. So it'll tell you what scenes have been included or have been considered for inclusion. It'll tell you about the acquisition events. It will then tell you about the events that have been generated. In this case, we only generated one. And then it'll tell you the scenes that are allocated to each event. And finally, at the end, it'll tell you what your final product is. So take a look at that report. That's important. Then you go and hit the Edit Product button, and it brings up the product editor, and here's the product that we just created, which is probably a load of garbage. But it's important that you bring up this product editor. If you created a new product, well, then there won't be anything to do. You've got an entirely new product, and from here you can start adding in, an index calculation and whatever else you want. If you've edited an existing product, you might already have a chain of processing operations defined for that product. And in that case, they're preserved, but they all have to be updated. And by going immediately into the product editor, it will then automatically begin updating everything. And if there are statistics, calculations in there, exports and so forth, they're all going to get regenerated. And it's important that you do that. Otherwise, everything is going to be out of date, wrong, and you'd have to do it manually at a later date. You're probably going to forget, and yeah, you'll get very confused. So that is the Create Product Sequence Wizard. I can make a few recommendations for you. I'll just go through them quickly. So if you want to create a scene product, do it from the scene database browser. If you want to create a scene sequence product, you can use the wizard, but it's just as easy to do it from the scene database browser. To create a small mosaic, it's probably easiest just to do it from the scene database browser. If you want to create a large mosaic, it's probably easiest to use the wizard. You can order the scenes in the mosaic by cloud. That's my recommendation. And you can select scenes in the mosaic by temporal proximity to the event. To create a mosaic sequence, use the wizard. Again, order scenes by cloud, select by proximity in time. And I would recommend that you gather your tiles from before the event time leading up to the event time. In other words, the data is gathered from before up to the point at which you claim the data is that you claim the data is representing. To create a collated scene, probably easiest just to use the scene database browser. To create a collated scene sequence or a collated mosaic or a collated mosaic sequence, use the wizard. And in this case, order your scenes in the mosaic by temporal proximity to the event. You won't have the option to select tiles this time because it's a collated product. And then in the case of collated product, I would either gather tiles from before the event time or straddling the event time. I think they're both reasonable choices. So that's the Create Product Sequence Wizard. It's in version 2.2 of ProRaster Scientific. There's a lot there to get through. It can be quite complicated, but by eliminating having to create hundreds of intermediate products, it's going to accelerate your productivity by an enormous factor, and it really changes the game in ProRaster Scientific and turbocharges productivity. So I recommend that you get on top of this and start using it. Thanks for watching.